amigo, ¿cómo estás?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Ruby, for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. We are so excited to be here with you today. Drop in the chat. Let us know where you're listening in from. We want to know who's here with us today. Where are you at in the country? How are you feeling? We're excited about this conversation. Carlos and I have known each other for, I don't know what, like 18 months, maybe?
Yeah, about a couple,
About 18 months.
2.5 years, something like that.
Yeah. And we've had conversations, and we finally were like, let's collaborate on something. And we started talking because we've seen a lot of overlap in the work that we do, and we started talking about the deep work of leadership beyond titles, beyond career trajectories. What does it mean to be a leader? What does inner work require of leadership? And we ended up having a really long conversation ourselves, and we thought, hey,
Yeah, I think we talked like 2.5 hours when it was scheduled for 30 minutes.
yeah, exactly. So, and we thought, let's bring this to our head. Let's bring this to our comunidad, and let's talk about some of the things that we don't always associate with leadership, and kind of see where this goes. So, welcome to those who are joining us. I see we have Sandra from LA. LA is in the house. Who else do we have here? For those of you that might be joining in or tuning in for the first time, my name is Ruby García. I'm a Latina leadership and visibility coach. I help first-gen high-achieving Latinas get seen, valued, and paid, right? Cha-ching, cha-ching. We're the lowest paid demographic. And so my mission is to help close that, and through, finding new opportunities and really positioning yourself as a leader. And with me today, I have Carlos. And Carlos, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing?
Yes, thank you so much, Ruby. Well, executive coach, helping out, especially on the Latino community. And the more I do this, the more I want to give. It's grown really organically. And again, it's just working with companies like García, working, with individuals like yourself, collaborating, helping, coaching, talk about the inner work. I'm glad that I did this when I left corporate many years ago. And so it's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see we have Olga in the house. We got Esperanza in the house. She's from Orlando, Florida. We have Danny from Raleigh, North Carolina, right here where is close to me. Michelle from Ohio. Maria in California. And we had Raul from California. So we got people from all over the country. And I'm really excited about this conversation and the inner work of leadership, right? Building emotional capacity. So I want to start off, and feel free to continue dropping in the chat. And please, this is meant to be a conversation, even though, we're the ones kind of facilitating here. Drop in any comments that you have or share your own experience in the chat. And I really encourage everyone also to just connect with each other, because this is also all about building comunidad. So I think where we can start this conversation, Carlos, is, when we initially had this conversation, we were talking about like, oh yeah, like leaders tend to want quick fixes, right? You want a promotion, you want a raise, you want to be visible, find a sponsor, but underneath that, there's more to that, right? Leadership is about identity. It's about having emotional intelligence. It's about being an embodied leader. And so when you hear the phrase inner work, what does that specifically mean to you? Like, because that sometimes we drop those things around like, oh yeah, do the inner work. But what does that even mean?
Yeah, no, great question. There's a lot to it, right? There's a lot of layers to that sandwich, or the way that I like to say it. There's a lot of layers to that torta de jamón. There's so much work when we talk about the inner work, right? It's, what does that mean? It's not like the movie City Slickers. What is that one thing? I'm kind of aging myself. It's about a lot of little things, a lot of little one things that have compounded interest. Is creating the space, slowing down, taking the time to really ask questions, to be curious about who we are, whether our identity, our personal narrative, our philosophy, how we see things. One of my favorite quotes by Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, you look at change. So for me, I'm constantly working on, is this the right way to look at it? Should I look at it a different way? Right. And again, there's no right or wrong way, but just taking the time to really do the inner work. So most of my clients, when they come to me, they're really good about knowing what they don't want, which is fantastic. We want that information. And when I turn it around, I said, okay, great. Thank you. So what is it? What can we work on? And they're like, well, I don't know what I want. That's what that's what I'm here with the coaching call, which is great. So part of it is really taking the time to look in, to ask questions and slow down and to really get to know, like, we talked about this the other day, get to know thyself a bit.
Yeah, I think of that too. And I see this, and I don't know, because I know you lead Hombres de Asa, so you'll have to tell me. But, the majority of my, the majority of people that I work with are Latinas, they're women, right? And so what I often see is that there's such a disconnect between like what they've been more focused or prioritized other people's needs or wants. They've lost their own idea of what is it that they want or need. So it's also very difficult to think about like, well, what do I actually want? Not what's been told to me or how I've been conditioned, but what do I actually want? So I agree. It's like a lot, doing the inner work is knowing who you are, like knowing your strengths, knowing your expertise, knowing what values drive you, knowing where you want to go, who you are. And then I also think of doing inner work as, it's funny because I didn't always associate the two, but now more and more I do, is doing the inner work also means doing healing work. I see healing work as essential to being an effective leader.
So what give us an example of healing, what that means to you, or something that either personal experience or an example?
Yeah. So like I just got done leading a cohort of women through a 6-month transformational program called Woman Warrior, right? And it's all about really like getting to know yourself, standing in your truth, like having, there's a lot of like conviction about like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. And when women have that internal shift, then they can like obtain the speaking opportunities, the visibility they want, launching new businesses or whatever. But in order to get there, there's maybe like these parts of themselves that they've denied or they're uncomfortable with. And it's really working through those things. And I've seen this play out, I think, in the workplace too, specifically where you have toxic leaders, like who are projecting, or they get triggered by certain employees. And so because they haven't handled their own ish, like they have the time leading those folks that maybe are either different or, personalities may be different, or they lead in a different style. And so I see inner work as like being really responsible for handling your own ish, right?
Yeah.
And like having the self-awareness to think about, how am I showing up for myself and how am I showing up for others?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something, the triggers. That's a big one, right? So we all have triggers.
Yeah.
Whether conscious or subconscious, we have triggers. So I think when I think about being an effective leader, like all these inner work for me is like, how do we align back this into leadership? That's a big thing of mine. So for me is knowing thyself and see what triggers do I personally have, either consciously or subconsciously. For example, if I'm talking to, back in the day, a boss where he or she is asking me or telling me to do something in a way that I'm not comfortable, I might get upset. Why am I getting upset? So a lot of the times it's easy to blame, right? It's easy to point the finger and, oh, it's my boss, it's my job. And I'm not dismissing that, but I love, like, every time we point at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at us, right? So when I start doing that myself, or I start seeing clients, like, and let's do a little bit of a deeper work and say, what can I do for me? Where are those triggers coming from? So that's when you said the triggers, the healing. I think a lot of times we don't take the time to get into, maybe the darkness might be too much, right? But being uncomfortable with our own thoughts, right? And I think there's reasons why we don't do it, either because we don't make the time, or sometimes we don't know what we're going to find out, or it's uncomfortable. So it's a lot there to unravel, and it's not a switch, right? It's like, okay, I'm healed, I know myself, okay, thank you. No, it takes time to really, depending if your center of gravity is not talking about feelings, it's not talking about emotions, right? That's why I love working with us and the group that we just finished yesterday, is about talking about the feelings and emotions. And we didn't grow up that way. Why? Because if I started crying as a little Carlitos, mijo, little boys don't cry. But hey, what did I tell you? Right? So we've been conditioned that way. So that, again, that becomes our center of gravity. So as we get older, subconsciously it's still there. My dad's telling me don't cry. That's right. So there's a lot of inner work. That's what it means. So the inner work is not necessarily what it means for you and me. It might be different for someone else, but again, to take the time.
Yeah. And I would love for, those that are listening in, what does inner work mean to you? Feel free to drop it in the chat too. Or, how do you see inner work relating to leadership? How has it played out for you, or even what you've observed? I think this is, it's not a topic. And I think also it's not a topic that we talk about a lot. And I heard you say that, individuals might be uncomfortable with it. And I think that it's also that there's not a lot of know-how, like what does it mean to do the inner work? And it could be like, I heard what you said was like, it's almost like unconditioning or deconditioning, right? Like deconditioning those narratives, kind of rewriting those scripts, right? If it's okay, it's healthy for a man to be in touch with his feelings. Feelings are there to help inform us, right? Or noticing the triggers. I think when we were talking, I was talking about how I had gotten really triggered by something with family recently. And I had to look and turn the mirror on. Listen, it's not about that other person, right? Like, what is it that I'm getting triggered about? Like, what is it in me that I need to work on? So I don't take the bait, so to speak, right? So I don't take and end up in some unhealthy cycle, right?
Yeah. Well, you said what's in me. I heard this analogy a long time ago. This individual was holding out an orange. I'm like, if you squeeze an orange, what's going to come out of it? Apple juice? Fruit juice? Like, no, there's going to be orange juice come out of it. So if somebody triggers anger, that's because there's anger inside of us. Whatever is inside, that's when it's going to come out. If your boss squeezes that orange, is there going to be apple juice? Like, no, there's going to be orange juice out of that. So when we start to blame, again, those three fingers to look in, it's like, what is it? Why is anger coming out? And I try to have like open-ended questions, right? Instead of whys. Like, what is it about me talking? And I'm using my boss, or somebody's boss. What is it when I talk to my boss, or when I talk with my significant other, or this happened, or somebody gets in my way, when on the road? Why is it that I get so upset? That's inner work, right? So whatever is there, it's going to come out, whether it's your mother-in-law, or your son, or whatever it is. So again, there's a lot there. So and I give different examples because it's not going to be the same for everyone. We're all in different chapters. We're all human. We're complex in our own beautiful way. So again, it's like I think about the wabi-sabi, right? The beauty in our imperfections. And that's the other thing. We talk about imposter syndrome all the time, like it's, the cool and new thing. But what does that even mean to you, right? That's part of the inner work. What are those thoughts that come in, the fears and so forth? So,
yeah. And what do you think happens for leaders that don't do their inner work? Like, what are the consequences? What have you even heard about or experienced?
Well, a great question. There's different leaders and different styles of leaders. And so when I do a 360 interview, we look at effectiveness. How an effective leader. Can you be a leader not do the inner work? I guess the answer is yes. But how an effective leader are you? How sustainable are you going to be there? Are you going to have maybe if you're not going and doing the inner work, you might have a high attrition rate, right? Those are the things that we don't think about. So why? Because we're so conditioned to think with this, opposed to this. This is the logical mind. This is where we think ROI. Right? So we're looking at the numbers. We're going to step over individuals. We're going to go up the corporate ladder, which is good. But what is the price that you're paying? So when you start to look in, you become more empathetic to yourself. That's where now you're introducing emotional intelligence. Right? In order for me to be more effective and be more empathetic to others and to be a true leader, otherwise I'm seeing that they're managing people, or right, instead of managing numbers and leading people. Those are two very different things. So me as a leader many years ago, I was excited and I was just managing people. That is not a leader.
No.
So when you start to do an effective work, that's when you truly become a leader. What does that mean? You're influencing others. People that don't want to leave. What's that saying that people leave their job or people leave their boss close to their job? That's because that's what comes up. And the other thing that comes up is, the African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So you may go fast for a while, but again, it's not sustainable. Once you start doing the inner work, then you really are looking at your stakeholders. You're managing up, managing down, and really leaning in with curiosity to these individuals to really influence them in a human way instead of just a number.
Yeah, and one of the things that made you think about when you were talking about like the thinking with the mind or the heart is climbing the corporate ladder or moving up isn't. We're not saying that's bad, obviously. Like we want those things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the space in which you do it from too. And it made me think of like, are you the type of manager that is like instilling fear so that people do things, or are you the type of leader that's influencing and creating other leaders? So it's a lot about the space in which, like, yes, you can be effective. And I was having this conversation, I think with you and with someone else recently. It's like, yes, you can be effective in an organization and lead with fear, but think about how much turnover you might have in an organization if that's the way that you're leading. Think about the burnout. It almost reminds me of like that, like old school authoritarian, like parent, right? Like, or like do what I say, and and that's it, as opposed to someone who's going to kind of give you some autonomy and maybe give you some guidance, but also give you permission to like make mistakes and stuff like that as well. And I think that's really important in a leader. And go ahead, and then I'm gonna.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you're highlighting, because I feel part of as an executive coach is making someone feel seen and heard. So right now it's like, I want to make sure we're highlighting some of these.
I know.
And I'll let you kind of talk about it or highlight them.
Yeah. So we have Olga here saying, for me, doing the inner work goes as deep as not only finding the triggers, but also how do you convert a bad situation into a gift? Finding the tools that work for you.
Yeah. Hello, Olga, and good seeing you, or good reading here. And I do want to comment on a couple of comments that about like, I love this duel and I love that. So I want to say thank you to comment earlier. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, of course. For me, like we have Michelle here. For me, doing the inner work means turning inward with courage and honesty, not judging myself, but to understand myself. It's a process of unlearning the narratives that told me to stay small, quiet, endlessly strong, and learning instead to lead from wholeness, rest, and self-trust. I love that. Like that's leading from a whole other place when you're leading from I'm a whole person, I'm nourished, right? Like I have confidence. This user says doing the inner work is the ability to evaluate your own performance, mental state, and motivations.
Yeah. So, part of the thing is when I talk to my clients, and not only clients, but friends and whoever, family members, is seeing that person in their totality. You know, a lot of people want to separate the personal from the work. Like, well, we're too complex of individuals because the work might affect at home and the home might affect the work, right? So looking at someone in their totality, to me, is really, really important.
Yeah. I don't see the two as separate. I always think of professional development as personal development, and personal development is professional.
Yeah, people see it as this or that. I see it as this and that. It's both and.
Yeah.
Both and, right? That's when the totality comes into place. Otherwise, again, we're too complex of individuals to not be affected by one or the other.
I agree. And we have Yomo over here. I honestly think inner work should be required for anyone in a leadership role. So do I. And it should be also like trauma informed.
Yeah.
We invest in degrees, training, certifications, but none of that matters if we're leading from unexamined wounds. Ooh, that's good. Or old patterns.
Yeah.
The work we do with ourselves shapes how we show up for everyone else, and everyone benefits from this work. Oh my God.
I mean, think about that, right? Because we are conditioned to think about the ROI. Emotional intelligence, that's really difficult to quantify. Yeah, you could kind of work through some programs, assessment tools, and 360. Look, when I talk to people, I can kind of see where the emotional intelligence is, but that it's not. I come from a sales background, right? So the whole thing is if you can't measure, you can't improve it. But somehow we want to be able to quantify everything. And somehow, okay, if we can't measure emotional intelligence or inner work, then we don't want to invest in it. Well, I want to change the narrative to be able to say, what do you get out of investing in your people about inner work, either with the coach, with the mentor, with the therapist? Because when you're talking about the effectiveness of a leader, that reminds me, when I do 360 interviews, what do? We are measuring to a certain, we're bringing in logic, but then we connect it to the heart, which is the emotional, which is, where's your center of gravity? Are you more a task-driven individual or more on the relationship side? Well, when you want to be an effective leader, you do both. If you lean too much towards a task, which is the analytical ROI, how are we going to make those numbers, which are very important. But if you lead with the human side, which is the relationship, then you're going to be, for me, a lot more sustainable. Why? Because people are not going to leave you. They want to work with you. And if they are going to leave you, they're going to say, Ruby, thank you so much. I've learned so much, but I have this other opportunity. What am I going to say? Oh my God, I can't believe you're going to leave me, but I'm so happy for you. That is a true leader, opposed to someone just leaving you because they can't. Yeah, you might be effective in regards to the numbers, but a true leader and effective, there's a lot more. So for me, how do we bring back the humanity back into the workplace?
Oh yeah.
Especially now with AI,
yes. I was just going to go there.
Right? And so for me now more than ever to really bring that, the emotional, the heartbeat, the empathy, and again, all that is encompassed on getting to know ourselves.
Yeah. And I'm gonna chime in because you brought up the AI. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm gonna make a shameless plug here. And the Latino AI Summit registration opened up today, so you can find that on my page. But what you said about AI, I think, is really important to this conversation too, because already the Surgeon General has declared loneliness an epidemic. Right. And even though that we're like more connected than ever through technology, but yet it is officially an epidemic. It is, I don't have the stats right in front of me, but I think it was like equivalent to smoke. It's
wow.
It actually impacts your health. So there's an equivalent to like smoking cigarettes. It has the same impact as loneliness to your health, and it impacts communities. And so, now that with AI, we're like, it's great in so many ways, but we still have, and I love AI, right? Like I went back to school to learn some of this. And I think it's more important than ever to also keep humans at the center, right?
Yes. And it's only going to get worse because it's going so fast. I was watching an Instagram reel today. Yes, I do. I'm trying to create better and healthy boundaries around that. But some girl said, AI this and AI this. And she's like, hey, I need a hug. Hey, I need a, right? It was just hilarious, right? To even using the AI to say, hey, I need a hug. I need a kiss. Again, it's just bringing back that humanity because it's only going to get worse. And how do we, I'm going to necessarily embrace AI. Yes, we want to do that. But also, I'm always leaning with curiosity.
Yeah.
Leading with curiosity is, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting my job? What do I need to do? But also, how is this affecting me as an individual in regards to my emotional or, empathy or connection with my stakeholders, right? If we bring this back into leadership, right? This is about the inner work and how it affects your leadership. You're going to start seeing that gap, that chasm, if you will, the gap of the size of the Grand Canyon when it comes to emotions, when it comes to humanity in the workplace, and it's only going to get worse. So having that awareness or that hyper awareness, if you will, to say, hey, what's going on with my team? I feel like we're getting a little more separated, right? That's where 360 interviews come in handy. Again, mentorship, therapy, coaching is to really create that space for someone to help you along with it. And I'm not saying you can't do it on yourself, right? But it does take practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to point out a specific statistic because we know that especially in corporate, it is very KPI and metrics driven, right? And leaders with higher EQ, emotional intelligence, drive up to 20% more productivity and 30% lower turnover. So there is a correlation between, your emotional intelligence and productivity, right? And turnover, which turnover is very, very costly, right? The amount of money that organizations spend onboarding someone and then to lose them, is an expensive process.
So Ruby, how do you see emotional intelligence work for you, work with your clients? How does that come up for you, and what's your interpretation of it?
So for me, that's a good question. So I mean, I like, I'm a very feeling person. I feel like I'm a very intuitive person. I mean, it's why I'm a coach, right? Is probably a big portion of it. And so for me, it's really about making sure that my clients feel seen, that they feel heard, and also really looking at like, my approach is never a one size fits all. Yeah. I'm never going to tell you do this and here's like the cookie cutter, take these steps and then put everyone through that same process.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
we see that it's, sorry to cut you off. See that kind of like on Instagram. If you want to be successful, you need to wake up at 5 o'clock and give me 100 burpees, and you need to do this. And I want to say, yeah, thank you. That works for you, but that doesn't mean that works for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's having part of, to add to your saying, the emotional intelligence to say, great, thank you. That works for you. What works for me as well? And to be able to have that empathy for others. So especially as a leader, if we bring it back to leadership and say, well, how is that person wired? How is what is their personality? What motivates them? Right? All that, to me, like you said, it's not a cookie cutter. So, back in the days, I remember one of my bosses said, Carlos, how do you have the lowest attrition rate? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know. Once I started doing some work is because I was leading people. I wasn't leading numbers. I was leading people. I was connecting with that individual. So to me, that is part of emotional intelligence. And it really, for me, the more you can do it for yourself and truly understand yourself, and then you're going to be better. And if you don't want to talk about feelings, you don't want to talk about empathy, okay. But let's talk about effectiveness. Let's talk about leading a team that really wants to work with you, that says, Ruby, I'm behind you 1,000%. I know we have to put 70 hours, but you can count on me. That is a connection that you have. That is emotional intelligence. That is investing again into your stakeholders.
Yeah. And I think that, kind of going off that, it's like giving people autonomy and choice and knowing, like, honoring how each individual on your team is, right? And kind of, like, mostly working with women, it's like I like to provide a lot of different tools and modalities and different frameworks so that people can pick what resonates most with them, because we're all have different values. We're in different seasons of our life. We, have had different lived experiences, even as Latinas, right? Like, just because we're Latina doesn't mean that we've all had the same life experiences.
Yes.
So really providing like the autonomy of, hey, like, what's best. And I think that's what I love about coaching is like, what's best for you. We're here as guides, right? Or to ask questions.
Yeah, we're not consultants to tell you what
exactly like
do.
But you know your life best. You know what you want best. You know yourself the best, right? So it's always like reflecting that mirror back to our clients, and I think that's a huge part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Look, it's always doing the work, and it's, I look at life as a moving target, right? It's completely moving. We're always doing inner work. Hey, way to go, Luis, my friend. I love his comment. I was thinking about what is that Basilica, La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain. That's been worked on since 1882. I had to look it up. Think about that. It's not, okay, we fix it and it's done. Like, that is how I see ourselves in our lives, to constantly be working in ourselves. Like, if you were to go to Barcelona, look at the details, there's going to be a lot of work in it. Yeah, you see the whole thing. It's beautiful, but you're going to start seeing all the intricacies of the work. And that is how I see ourselves, to continue, even if life moves and the target moves, is I hope that I can continue working on myself until the day that I pass. I think that is the beauty of it. And some people, they want to have that quick fix. And look, for me, I always tell my clients, there's nothing here to fix. You're not, right? You're not someone to fix. You're already, that's what I bring in the wabi sabi, right? The beauty and the imperfection. Imagine if everything was dandy, everything was great. That would be pretty happy, right? I mean, pretty sad, sorry. So again, doing the inner work, wherever chapter that you're in. And the other thing is, like, this came to mind, the imposter syndrome. I work with kids in their 25s, and I work with C-suite people in 60 and 70. I tell you what, they all have imposter syndrome. They all have something, right? So just really, again, I want to focus on the inner work, to whatever that means to you. So as coaches, our job is to create that space to say, what does that mean to you? It could be taking the time to journal, to process, to peel the onion back. 9 out of 10 times, that client comes to me, they come up with something, and most of the time it's not that.
Yeah, it's
There's an undercurrent that is very different. There might be some connections, a correlation, but again, that is, so when I say what is the inner work, that's what it is. It's the meats and potatoes, to really know, what's in the meats and potatoes, what's in the salsa, what's in the caldo, what are all the seasonings. That is the inner work.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I get probably about, I don't know, 80 to 90% people come up to me because they're unhappy in something in their career, right? And then, but it's never really about their career. It's about being seen. It's about being valued. It's about, boundaries. It's about a huge portion of it is self-worth. So it's always like something way deeper than the original request, which is why doing that inner work is so important, because when we can shift our, either our mental mindset or our how we're being, that's when you see the results shift too. And I'm curious for you, Carlos, specifically, like, what are some maybe lessons that you've learned, or what's some inner work that you've actually maybe even done for or experienced for yourself?
Yeah, I got a lot of lessons, things that I wish I would have not done. I remember early on in my coaching career, I was talking, one of my clients had gone through a divorce, and I said, oh, I got it. I went through a divorce many years ago. I know how to help this person. I went through a divorce. I know exactly what you need. Boy, was I wrong. So that's a great example. Just because I went through divorce, it could look very differently, and it did look very different for this individual. So now my lesson is I try to come as neutral as possible, and we all have a story. We're all affected in very different ways. So for me is to really truly listen to that person and see how they're going through that, how they're processing, not how I processed it. I might have a little bit of, inner wisdom around that. I might have some experience around that, but it may, and most likely it's going to look very different for all of you going through divorce. So that's kind of one of the lessons that pops up.
Yeah. And I want to get to Olga's question. I'll give you a second to think about it, because I want to share a story too that kind of came up as you thought about that story with the divorce, right? Is like, it's not every divorce looks different, and all the pieces of that. But I think about when I started my coaching business was over a decade ago. And when I first started, I was, I'd gone through a 1-year coaching program. I was all ready to start my business. I had gotten laid off at the same time / kind of manifested like getting laid off. And then like I failed in my business miserably. Like I didn't have any clients. I wasn't making any money. Right. And why that was because a couple of things. One was I was still afraid of being seen, which is why I'm so big on visibility now, because I've seen the difference that it makes. But underneath that was a worthiness. I had to deal with some of the worthiness. So I actually stepped back, even though I had the business in name. I actually had to step back for probably about 2 years and do some of the inner work. So for me, like kind of answering Olga's question here about some of my favorite tools, like I did do therapy, right? I knew that there were some things that were holding me back. I knew there was some a lot of grief that I hadn't dealt with, that I was kind of operating over, right? Like I had just gone through a divorce, lost my job, then started this business, had a new baby, all the things. And so there was grief that I had to deal with. And that helped me in, seeing a therapist. Journaling was a big part of that too. A lot of I just tend to process a lot through writing. So journaling became very essential to me to kind of develop self-awareness and to be able to process. So that was another favorite tool.
Yeah, I love the journaling. I think it's, for me, I'm old school, so I literally journal with my pen and paper. And I think for me is tapping into our intuition. Talk
to me more about that, because that does not seem, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I think in corporate, it's all about logic, right? So intuition seems kind of like, whoa, that's a little woo-woo.
Right, and that's the whole thing, right? When we say we live up here because this is the logical mind, we need that in the work environment, right? So when we do the 360 interviews, again, task versus relationship, logic versus heart. So we need both. So when I do the journaling, I go from the logical mind, and for me, that's the easy way, because that's where we're being conditioned to look at numbers and so forth. And again, we need that. But when we start to switch and really put emphasis on this, and again, it's not as, in corporate, we can't do an ROI when it comes to that. But journaling for me has become very therapeutic. It's very tap in, like you said, into my intuition. Like you said earlier, it's like on the coaching, we're not solving the problem. We're not telling someone the answer, is helping them find their own answer, right? Because it'll be ridiculous for me to tell you like, oh, this is your problem. Well, I don't know that person's life story. Even if I'm with them for months, it's helping them, peeling the onion, asking questions for them to go deeper for themselves. So on the intuition, I think there's a lot there. And somehow back in the days, I connected intuition to mostly like female, like, oh, right? Because back in the days, women are very intuitive. And I figured out that I think we all are intuitive, but how well do we connect to that? So for me, going back to the question, the tools, personality assessment tools or testing, 360, therapy, coaching, mentorship. A lot of the times we want this magic pill.
Yeah.
Right. What is the tool? And this is not a hit on Olga, right? It's just with my clients. What is that? We want that magic pill. But in reality, it's just doing the work, and really it seems simple, but again, it's just talking about it. I remember I took I wanted to be healthier, so I hired a nutritionist, and I kept on asking her, like, no, what super food do I need to eat, and what is it? And she said, Carlos, you just need to drink more water, get better sleep, and eat a lot more whole foods. No, wait, that's it? This is what I'm paying you for? Right? Somehow we want to complicate it, and we want that diet. Let me tell you, if you read this book and this is the tool, right? And I'm not dismissing that question of the tools. It's in the contrary. I want to emphasize that all these are little mini tools. They're mini tools that help you, guide you in the chapter that you're in your life. We're all different. And again, either inner work from trauma, and maybe that's more of the therapist, inner work about career and where you are, about being stuck or feeling stuck. Maybe it could be a little bit of your identity. I remember when I left corporate many years ago. For the first month, I was happy, but then I went into depression. Why? Because I identified to what I did for a living.
Yeah, absolutely.
I literally had to go through mourning, like I was mourning myself. I was mourning my old identity, right? So that took a lot of work. And you could say, oh, me leaving a job and get another one. It sounds simple, but once you're in it, it's a lot harder to kind of go through it, right? So now I identify, as Carlos Martin, what I do as an executive coach, that doesn't identify me. What I do for a living, it doesn't identify me. Is my why maybe identifies me. I do the coaching because I want to be, my why, my personal why is to be the coach that I didn't have. Yeah. That could identify me, not what I do for a living. So again, a lot of these mini tools that we have, the processing is the overall umbrella of a tool, if you will. And I do want to say there's some amazing people. Dave Soto, a good friend of mine, awesome job, Carlos. Thank you so much. I wanted to read and say thank you, because part of my inner work is driving me nuts of like, I want to people feel seen and heard. So I do apologize.
Yeah. And one of the things about doing the inner work I think is so important too, is that it's not a one and done, right? Like there is no, all right, I'm done. Like I've arrived.
Once you think you made it, you got something else to work on.
Yeah, like literally, I feel this myself. I'm going through a transition right now, and I'm gonna get a little personal and vulnerable with everyone.
Hey, this is what we want here. Yeah, this is the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah, exactly. But like the last couple weeks, I had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that were coming up in my past, right? Like I was reunited with a niece of a sibling that had passed away that I have not seen in 20 years. A lot of family stuff comes up with that. And it's been very emotional, right? And there's been a lot of grief that I've had to work through over the last 2 weeks and some other things on top of that. And it was funny because one of the things that I was kind of sharing with some of my close friends was, I'm like used to dealing with feelings and I'm used to doing grief. Like I actually make grief a part of my coaching programs because I believe it's one of the things that stops individuals or makes people feel stuck or frozen, or it comes out in other ways. So I'm a big proponent on that. And I didn't realize how much grief I had been sitting on top of until these situations kind of appeared, right? Yeah. And so it's not that I was not dealing with it or not handling it, but sometimes in our life, certain things come up and all of a sudden it's like, there's another layer, right? Yeah. So it's like, there's a layer to go back and look at what is this bringing up in me right now? And what is, and I think this is important, is not looking at it through a victim, like, why is this happening to me? But what, like this is actually something that's happening for me. What can I learn from this? Right. Kind of like Olga had said earlier, is like, what's the valuable lesson that I can get from this experience? How can I use this to like transform me? And, And so the process of like, and as a coach, and I'm sure you too, like, I mean, I've worked with, I can't even tell you how many coaches this year. I feel like I've done a lot of internal work. I've probably worked with 5 different coaches this year for different reasons, right? Some were more about sales or processes. Others were more about like energy, or, or a coach that does a lot around influence. All of these things, are part of me doing the inner work, but just I'm sharing this to say that it never ends, right? Like, and even as coaches, that's why we support each other, or find other coaches, or find communities, so that we can grow together. So I guess kind of wrapping that up, I'm going to ask a question, Carlos, is like, how do you see community accelerating the inner work?
Well, before I answer that, you mentioned the grief part to be able to do the work. So if we connect that back to leadership, is also to having the awareness of where your stakeholders are as well. What if they're going through that, right? So if you're going in, you're on the logical mind and, kicking butt, good for you. But if you're not paying attention to your stakeholders, and, Ruby is going through something, right, that you're going to miss something. There's going to be a gap. There's going to be a disconnect. So that is also part, when we start doing the inner work for ourselves, that gives us not only the empathy, but also the awareness, right, of our stakeholders, and say, I'm seeing that Ruby's going through something. Let me go and talk to her, right? That is also part of it when we talk about grief. We're doing the work, but also to give us the awareness of others.
Yeah. And I got to say, like for me, even as a coach, and I do a lot of group work, I will share with my folks, like, here's what I'm going through. And because I, and this is, I mean, it depends on what group and kind of, because there's a lot of different programs and things like that, but I know that's not typical of everyone, but I also do it so that there's some accountability. And so like, I'm still responsible for it, right? Because I still, even if I'm processing my own stuff, for example, like tonight, I'm leading my one of my cohorts. Like, I still need to show up and bring my best for them, even though like I've got this stuff over here, right? And so that's why I'm doing the inner work, is so it's like I'm not projecting my crap onto them, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, go ahead.
It's so important, because I honestly think that that's why sometimes we see these toxic environments. It's people haven't dealt with their own crap, and then they're bringing it into work, and then they're pushing that crap onto other people.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point, important for coaching, is one of the things that they teach us is to try to come in as neutral as possible. Because if you're coming up with your own things, now you are projecting on that onto your client. So we try to come in as neutral. So if I'm running around, if I'm upset because of traffic or whatever that might be, I take the time to focus. I do breathing work. I meditate. That's another tool that we haven't really talked about. I think meditating, breathing technique.
Yes.
If you haven't heard of Wim Hof,
yes.
I suggest you look at it. Look at them. That's another tool. Going back to those tools, right? Yeah. Breathing work. So all those things are gonna bring you back to the inner work. What is that? Inner work is a practice. Yes, it is. It is a practice, right? We can't just say, I remember the first time that I meditated, I was horrible. I'm like, how do people do this? Now I could sit for an hour.
Oh my gosh, I'm impressed. I'm not there yet. Yeah. But I do want to give a shout out. She's not on here, but I want to give a shout out to Dr. Esther and Dr. Paul. If you don't know Dr. Esther, I don't know how to say her name, Zelendon, and Dr. Paul Rivera, they host the most amazing breathwork sessions. In fact, they're doing it for free through the end of the year, so make sure to connect with them. They're on LinkedIn too. I've been doing their breathwork sessions. I also have another that's been a huge part of my practice as well. Yeah. I also have another program that I'm in where I do breath work twice a month in another group. And that's but you can also go on YouTube and, learn Wim Hof and some of the other techniques.
Yeah, because that forces you to slow down, because a lot of the times, scientifically speaking, 85 and 90% of the things that we do on a regular basis, it's already pre-programmed. It's our subconscious.
Yep.
It's already done. So if we're not necessarily conscious about what we're doing, then our subconscious is running ourselves. And that's what our body does and our mind to be effective. Fantastic. But that means our old narratives, our old identity, our philosophy is running who we are. Again, which is great. But at some point, I start to see this with individuals that quote unquote made it. They're executives in the C-suite making, tons of money. They're successful and they're feeling stuck. Why? Part of it is because that narrative, whatever got them there, may no longer serve them into the new direction that they want to go. So that's part of us reinventing ourselves. So sometimes it's a little difficult to say, well, why would I want to change? How I was is what got me here. And I want to say, fantastic, amazing. But you start to question, does this process still work for you? This way of thinking, identity, philosophy, narrative, all these things still help you in the new direction that you now want to go and say, yes, awesome, thank you, I got here. So those are the things, another part of a tool or inner work to be able to help you.
Yeah. All right. So I know we're coming to the end. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. And I'm going to go back and ask you, because I think we ended up kind of going off trail. When it comes to community, how do you think that community can help accelerate, doing that inner work?
Well, just yesterday I saw it, Hombres de Hace. It's a small group, but I saw the power of community, how creating that space to be seen and to be heard. I know I repeat that a lot. But again, especially as men, sometimes we don't have that. We don't create that space. Women are really good at that. Men, we want to do it all alone. And if we're together, I remember when I was married, a friend of mine was going through some stuff and I got home and she said, so what's going on with so-and-so? I'm like, I don't know. You just spent the whole day with your friend. You have no idea about, no, we talked about fishing and we talked about, right? And so us guys, we don't listen, right? And she was going nuts. Like, how can you didn't ask him? Like, you didn't mention this. I didn't ask. So it's not an excuse, so when you create that, even though it's a small group, I still call that a community, but that has a lot of power. So, and it takes sometimes a coach, a facilitator, an individual to create that space, or at least to begin the conversation. To say, yeah, fishing is great, but what's going on? I noticed that you don't have the same energy, or you're just not happy, right? And what are they going to say? Like, no, Carlos, that's okay. I don't want to talk about it. Like, no, I do. So forcing them, I want to say forcing, that's kind of a harsh word, but
inviting them.
Yeah. Well, challenging them. Yeah, or just, creating, again, that space to see that. So to answer your question, I think community, even if it's small, even with your significant other, that to me creates positive ripple effects. Yeah. Because now it's kind of contagious, right? That community, that inner circle, the hyper awareness, the breathing, the tools, everything that we've talked about. Now, hopefully someone listening here could be like, oh, cool, I like that. And they go and practice. And then now that individual could tell their parents, their significant other, their kids. That is creating a positive ripple effect. So that's why I think the power of community, especially with stuff that's going on now, and how do we really dig in? So,
yeah. One thing I just want to comment as a female, I love hearing about, sometimes I just think about how women are conditioned. But also what you reminded me is like men are conditioned in a lot of ways too, of how to be or not to be, right? And a lot of men have been taught, like you were saying, to, not be in touch with their feelings or not express their feelings, even if they're feeling it, right? They push it down or compartmentalize or whatever it is. And so that's such a great reminder. And I just want to give a sneak peek that Carlos and I are hoping to have some more conversations like this. And one of the conversations topics that we've talked about is kind of going back and forth on like the Marianismo, machismo kind of dynamic. So you'll have to stay tuned for future programming. But I've seen that with community too. in my, like, one of the things that I always say is community is the cure.
Community
is the cure, right? Like, I think when it comes to inner work, and it even goes back to the proverb of what you said earlier about, like, you can do this on your own and go slow, or we can do it together and go fast. It's actually why, like, I do very, very little one-on-one coaching. The majority of my programs are done in community, because I have found that it's actually an accelerator to getting.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Like, because in a community, for example, you're not like, everyone is bringing their own medicine. Everyone is bringing their wisdom. Everyone is bringing their strengths, gifts, talents, expertise, right? So it's, I may not have the answer, or, like, maybe in that moment I'm busy or whatever, but it's like someone can always reach out to someone else in our community and get the support and the answers. And then what also happens is that everyone ends up being a mirror for each other, right? So, like, hey, someone's going through a difficult time and struggling. It's like someone can hold up the mirror and say, like, hey, I still see you as powerful. I still see, like, the brilliance that shines in you. I see the value in you, and remind you of it on those hard days when, hey, like, someone's just really struggling. And so for me, community has been essential. Like I said, I do very little one-on-one coaching, because I've seen individuals get faster results and go farther in community.
Yeah, I wrote down the medicine part, because going through the cohort for a few months with Hombres Yace, I saw that, right? It wasn't about me. It was about creating that group and that space. And I remember we take a survey after every section. And one of the things they're like, we want more time on the breakouts, because that's where magic happens. Like you said, that medicine that we all bring, not only the facilitator, right, but also them as individuals. So I love the community aspect. Everybody brings their own medicine. Everybody brings in their own inner wisdom. And when you create that space, like you said, that community, we all add, and we all, like Asa says, we, juntos we rise.
Yeah, absolutely. So
there's so many amazing comments here. I feel so bad here.
I know I haven't been able to post all of them, but I want to thank everyone for coming. Carlos and I want to keep having these conversations with you all. And so we want to invite you to, give us feedback. If there's topics that you're interested in hearing us explore, like, let us know. We've talked a lot about, just offline, Carlos and I have talked a lot about what it means to be a highly conscious leader, a heart-centered leader, right? Like, someone that's puts people first.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to have these conversations, and we have some, again, we're kind of planning a series, and but if there's specific topics that you want, let us know. Reach out to us, drop us a DM, put it in the comments. Like, we want to make it valuable to you, so that you have tools and resources that you can walk away with, that you're maybe having new perspectives, or thinking about things in a new way. At the end of the day, leadership is always about self-leadership. You have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead others.
Yeah, I love that. And Cynthia Vasquez, hello, and thank you for the comment. Yeah, it, to me, is people first approach. That is how, if I could leave you with something, that's what it is, the people first approach. So thank you everyone for joining. And yes, any comments or feedback, or again, we're not, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm not a guru, we don't know it all, but for us just to create that space to have this dialogue. And that's why we encourage people to bring in their comments, and we're going to look at all these comments and hopefully embrace those and then use them on the next session. So thank you, Ruby, for you inviting me to have the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that I could have it with you, Carlos. That, like, since we met, I was like, oh, I found a pal, right? Like, just
I remember the first time you're like this. I'm like, oh my God, I love that.
And I was like, I didn't know not everyone knows what that means.
I mean, I grew up with this. And if you don't know,
you got to be Latino, right? Like, So everyone, we just want to thank you so much. And we look forward to having future conversations with you. drop some comments in the chat, and we're sending you so much love. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the week.
Yes, thank you, everyone.